So Shelley, you're one of the Lifo master trainers for the UK. How did you first come across Lifo?
About 15 years ago. So I was introduced to Lifo by a guy called Graham Wilson from the Success Factory. So he brought it along as one of a number of models for a training session we were running for a DIY retailer at the time.
So what was it about Lifo in particular that you really liked?
At the time, I liked it because it was simple. We were working with operations managers. They understood it. They could relate to each other. We could apply it in a very active, experiential kind of way for them, and they could take it away and use it. So that's why I liked it at the time.
So you've been using it over about 15 years, it sounds like. So how have you developed and how have you started using it in different ways?
I was really interested in it. I was interested in the effect that we had from that group of people, and I've kind of, as I've moved along in my career, I've explored more and more about Lifo and similar models and kind of the research, you know, from where it stems. And particularly in the last sort of 10 years, I've used it with boards and organisations. So I've used it in a real commercial context to understand where the team are versus where the business needs to be over the next 2, 3, 4 years, and started to put a plan against it, whether that's just for the senior team, whether it's about building organisational competencies so they can kind of develop towards whatever their vision happens to be.
So we talk all the time about helping people play to their strengths, but is that always the case? Is that always what you're trying to use the instrument to do?
Yeah, it often happens, particularly in a turnaround situation where the business needs to do some things fundamentally different in order to grow, survive, you know, maybe rebrand, change the way that they do things. So my role is often to go in and take an investment thesis by an investor group and look at the senior team particularly, and then filter it down to the organisation around, okay, where are they versus the requirement, and almost 9 times out of 10 they're on a slightly different personal trajectory, and it's how do you, there's a combination of answers to that. Some it's around how do we develop them to be better in other competency areas, and sometimes it's about bringing some people in who are very competent in those areas to act as a catalyst to the rest of the team.
So what you've just talked about sounds like you use it in a really commercially oriented way, you know, really to deliver the business. And yet a lot of people will say, well, this is pink and fluffy stuff.
Yeah, I'm not an advocate of happyology, so it's not the way I work, and anybody who references me will absolutely say that that's the case. So for me, the reason why this tool is so applicable is because it's very straightforward. You can use it in a commercial context. You can also use it very well with individuals around their own personal development, which is much more of an individual approach. But for me, its huge value is how it relates to the organisation. So what's the context of the individual and their role within a bigger organisational group? And for me, that's where most of the benefit is, so which is why I like it.
So, Master Trainer, what do people get from your accreditation process?
I think, you know, what I specialise in is joined up HR, so people alignment, and I think through the accreditation programmes that I run, they can see how this will help them, whether it's around developing a people plan, whether it's about working with a team, whether it's around working with individuals, but it helps put the whole sort of people agenda into context, and I think they walk away at the end of the 3 days thinking about not this is an isolated tool and it would work with Joe Bloggs and Fred, but more around actually how do I use this as a total infrastructure for what it is that I'm trying to achieve with the organisation that I'm working with, and certainly that's always the feedback that I generally get.